Hi, everybody. We are really excited again about our first Friday real estate talks. This month it is May, and that May means the beginning of the summer down here in the South. And I love Lake Lanier and selling lakefront properties. So we thought, we don't always do really specific types of webinars, but for this, we have so many people who are so interested in Lake Lanier and understanding what it's like to live on a lake in general and things to consider that we thought this would be quite appropriate for this time of year. So that's what we'll be talking about. Be sure if you have any questions throughout that you just plop them into the question box. Parker will interrupt us if there's something that makes sense for us to discuss right away. Otherwise, we'll address them at the end. Then, hi, I'm Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
I'm a realtor, of course, but the thing I really like to consider myself is a dream maker. All of my career paths that have led me here to being a real estate agent and working with awesome clients it has been helping people identify what their dreams are, what they want to be, what they want to achieve, and then helping them get there. And with real estate, I can really do that on a regular basis with a lot of different people in a lot of different stages of life, and I love it. I work with VPR, luxury properties, and I have a lot of different designations. Probably these aren't even all updated, actually. Just it's been really important to me to continue getting the types of education that will help me serve you guys the very best way. I love negotiating. Actually, Parker, you don't know this, but I was just at a a conference with luxury real estate agents from across the globe, and one of our guest speakers was Chris Voss. Do you know who that
Oh,
is?
I do. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, he was an FBI hostage negotiator. He was the
Yeah.
lead FBI hostage negotiator, and so he came and talked to us about negotiating and kind of really being able to do the very best for whether it's a seller that we're representing or a buyer that we're representing. So that was really cool to have him there.
And the trick to negotiation is you cry first, right? That's what I've always done. You just cry, and then no, it's not that. Okay, well, you'll maybe that's the next webinar is you can talk to us about a good negotiation. That's really cool. Well, I don't have anything nearly as cool as that. I did not get to go to a luxury conference and listen to the former FBI chief negotiator, but I did get to start at a new company last month, American Financial Network, or AFN. I'm so excited. Whenever you are a lender that's changing companies, it's definitely going to be a little bit different than if you were to change companies in a different industry. So, I mean, I'm still using kind of the same system, the same software, just different branding, and a little bit different messaging. But really, the reason why I made the switch is because I wanted to be a true one-stop shop for my borrowers and for my realtor partners. And with AFN, I now am able to literally do anything and everything. So I can obviously do all residential, including construction, which we'll talk about in a second. But I can also do commercial. I can do land. I can do fix and flip. I can do hard money. So really, the sky is the limit, and that's what I wanted when I was looking for a new company to continue my career as a lender. So really excited about that. And if this is your first time tuning into a First Friday webinar, just know that Ashley and I go way back. And we were both school leaders in Memphis before making the transition to the wonderful world of real estate. So without further ado, Ashley, take us away. Lake Lanier real estate tips for buyers and sellers.
Great. All right. Well, let's get started. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about, and again, this is kind of Lake Lanier, but it's also really translatable to many waterfront properties, especially lake properties. So we're going to talk about what some key characteristics are of lake properties. We're going to talk about how much value being on the lakefront actually adds, how we can market your home to sell. And of course, if I keep dropping in Lake Lanier, it's really just because that's my main market in the area that I focus in. But again, you can translate this to pretty much any lake property. And then also same with buying a property, things to consider. So let's talk about some key characteristics of lake properties. There's actually quite a few that a lot of people don't always think about. And as we talk about these properties, we are going to also talk about maybe the advantages or disadvantages, and that might not even be the right word, but things that make something more valuable versus something maybe not as valuable to buyers and sellers on the lake. So the first, of course, moving to the lake. What do you want, Parker? Besides that margarita?
I mean, you want a beautiful view, right? I mean,
Yeah.
why else move to the lake except for the margaritas?
So you want a great view, and maybe you want a great place to swim too. So we'll talk about that too. But um, that most people are really looking for a view. You want to be able to see that lake from your porch, from your kitchen while you're cooking, from when people, as soon as people walk in your front door and you have a great view out to that lake, it's like automatically relaxes everyone to just go when you walk in the door. And so a view though on the lake is often going to cost you a little bit more money, especially a wide open view. So those are things to consider. And then if you don't have a view of the water, you can still be on lakefront property. My where I live right now actually has a teeny tiny summer view, so I can see glimmers of the lake through the trees. But basically, for the sake of this, I'll say like there's basically no view of the water. But what I do have is a winter view, which is great. When the leaves are off the trees, I can see the lake during the winter. And but either way, I'm on the lake. I'm on lakefront property. I've got a dock. I can just walk down there anytime I want to. Just can't see it all the time. So, but because mine doesn't have that year-round view, where I live is not going to cost as much as like where my parents live, where they've got a wide open, mowed grass all the way to the water, mile long view.
Hey, actually, a question came in about this. So, when it comes to a view, obviously I mean, that's a huge part of a valuable lake property. But is a good view? Is it quantified in any sense on an appraisal? Meaning, like, is there like a category that an appraiser is going to use to actually assess the view of something like the lake? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer is yes. I am not an appraiser and I have not gone through all of that training, but I actually was just talking to an appraiser the other day about one of our properties that is now under contract. And they take the lake view as something that they add into the appraisal or subtract out of, depending on what the view is.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you.
All right. So another key characteristic that most people are going to want, most people, when you're living on the lake, is access to a dock. And the reason for that is you, of course, are going to hang out on your dock. You don't have to, you can be right on the water, literally, but not in the water if you're on your dock. So you can just stick your toes in if you want to cool off. You can watch your kids or your friends floating next to you in the water if you're not wanting to get wet. But also, a great thing about a dock is most docks, not all, but most docks are permitted to have slips for boats. So if you have a personal boat, you can keep your boat right there in your dock, right there at your house, and be able to enjoy it very easily without going somewhere else to use your boat. And if for some reason you don't have a dock, it would be considered like a disadvantage, or in another word, again, maybe lowering the value a little bit of that lake property. But as long as you're on the lake, you still can walk down to the lake and still play in it, fish in it, do whatever you want. You just don't have a place to keep everything really easily right there.
If a property does not have a dock, but you're really interested in it, then how easy is the process to maybe get a dock purchased and installed before you even close on the house? Or is there maybe a permitting process that folks like me don't know about?
Yeah, I imagine that most every lake is a little different. So I will answer specifically for Lake Lanier on this one. We have Lake Lanier is run and owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. And so they have very strict requirements about what you can do to anything that's considered core property, which on our lake is most people's backyards don't even belong to them. It belongs to the Army Corps of Engineers. One of those things includes having a dock. So they do give out dock permits that range from like a platform dock, which is just one you can only sit on and play on. It does not have a place where you would put your boat there. A single slip dock, which is a certain size, or a double slip dock. They even have permits, which they no longer give out, for covered docks, completely covered, where you like kind of drive in like a garage. So you can get on a waiting list for a dock permit. Dock permits are tied to the deed. So technically to the person who owns the home, if you think about it like that, it's tied to the deed versus the actual land. So when if there's already a dock permit in place, that's very valuable for people buying here on Lake Lanier. So even Parker, if for some reason they have a dock permit, but maybe that dock's like in really bad disrepair and needs to be replaced, they can totally then go out and buy a new dock and have it brought there, as long as it fits within the permitting that has been provided by the Corps. If the property does not have a dock permit, there is a waiting list that is like thousands of people long,
Wow.
and most likely you won't get a dock permit. There are
So
some ways to move up on the list a little bit, but it's not something we'll talk about in this.
is this something that obviously you I mean if you're trying to list a lake house that has a dock permit that's going to convey, you want to bring that up, but is that something that you can quantify in an appraisal, or is it just something that you know you just kind of have to hope? Like, I'm just trying to think, like, how do you, it seems so valuable, but how would you be able to quantify the value of something like that and still have the property appraised?
The property, I'm I don't know the answer to that as far as how they actually do that in an appraisal, but what I do know for sure, like your tax appraisals are based on your dock permitting. So
Oh, cool.
if you're not permitted for a dock, then you're not charged for that. If you are permitted for a dock, you are, and then you're charged based on the size also of the permit of your dock.
Nice. Okay. That was not a question from the audience. That was a question for me and my brain. So thank you, Ashley. Sorry for the curveball. Let's go to the
You're
next one. Water.
you need to know these things anyway for all the people buying on the lake, so it's good to know.
I know we obviously have talked a little bit about dock permits. I feel like that. What if that's the new title of this session? It's just like dock permits, the whole entire webinar. Anything you want to touch on water depth, or are we good to go to the next slide?
Well, I think water depth's really important. So you've got kids, right? And they're still
Yeah.
kind of little, so they're probably not. Well, maybe one of your oldest might be jumping off the dock on her own by now, but we're big kids, right? So if you go over to someone's house and you jump off the dock into 3 feet of water versus you jump off the dock into 15 or even 8 feet of water or 20 feet of water, how's that going to make you feel about like just playing there, right there by the dock?
Yeah, I mean, also not even just the jumping too, but I used to go over to a friend's house growing up because I grew up, near slash on Lake Lanier, and it was a beautiful view, but it was so shallow, the cove where the dock was, that when you would swim, your feet were always touching like the bottom of the lake, and it was just grossed me out. So, no,
Yeah.
water depth would be really important to me for sure.
The other reason it's really important is on our lake, and actually a lot of lakes around Georgia, the water levels change all the time for various reasons. Lake Lanier, it's usually due to a rain issue, but since the Corps owns the lake, they also let water out sometimes so that it helps feed other things further down the Chattahoochee River. So the water depth changes all the time. So again, you're in this cove, and then the water goes down. A lot of times you're not going to be able to keep pushing your dock out to chase the water. At some point, all the other docks in your cove are going to get in your way. Versus if you're at the mouth, closer to the mouth of a cove, or if you're in a wider cove that already is deep, as the water goes down, people can keep pushing their docks in, but not being in the way to be able to still use their boats all year round. So those are really important things to look for, or at least know that maybe in some months you might not have access to your boat, but having a plan and knowing, okay, the water's going down, let me get my boat out of the water so I can go launch it from a public place. Or I actually don't use the lake during this time of year, because a lot of times it's lower like in the winter time anyway. So don't use the lake then. So it's okay that I'm pulling my boat out for the winter.
No, that makes a lot of
Okay.
sense. I'm learning so much. Love it. Love it. This is why we do these.
Yes. And actually I'll do the second one here just because we were talking about the water depth. Slope often is a good sign of if you have no clue about the lake and you're just kind of looking at the lake and you're like, I wonder if they have good water depth there. You can often tell, like if a yard is very steep, that most likely your water is going to be very deep at your dock versus because it just follows the curve, right? Versus if it's like a really flat walk to the water, usually you're going to have a bit of a shallower water there. That's not always true because I'll even use my parents as an example. Theirs is a relatively flat walk to their water, but they've got deep water in their cove. It kind of falls off right away. Kind of when you go to the beach and you wade into the ocean and then you're 2 feet in and you just fall in. That's kind of how their cove is. So, but it's still a good way to tell. And the reason that a slope in a yard is going to be an advantage or a disadvantage for a potential buyer or seller is that if it's not as hard to walk down to the lake, right? It's not too steep, then you're going to enjoy it a lot better. You can easily pull a wagon behind you with all of your lake, your coolers, your toys, your kids. But if it's really steep, then you're going to have a harder time maybe getting back and forth to the dock. Also, boat traffic can be an issue. Yes, thanks. Boat traffic, it really will depend on, this doesn't impact people too much, but it could, especially if you're used to hanging out, floating in your lake with your family and friends. If there's a lot of boats coming by, you'll have a lot more wake in the water. Your dock might get rocked a lot more too. And sometimes it can be louder if there's boats coming by on a regular basis. So it's just something to consider when you are looking at lakefront property.
Ashley, something that my dad and I used to do a lot growing up was fish. And I just always remember going into different coves because it's called skipping under docks. You would skip your lure underneath the dock because fish sometimes like to kind of hide, underneath boats and all of that. And I just remember my dad would sometimes, whenever we'd go into a cove, he'd call it a money cove because we could see on the depth finder that sure enough, just like your parents' lot, it was like a really nice, gentle slope, but then just based on the topography of the cove, it would drop really, really deep, and the fish would actually hang out kind of right at that drop. So yeah, just super interesting how you evaluate, features that are super unique to like a niche market like this.
So true. It's so different per lot. So okay, so the lot functionality. This is more a very broad thing, but for the sake of this webinar, I'll just talk about a couple of things. One, let's talk about what's kind of written here under disadvantages. So we already talked about the steepness of a lot, the slope, and that could impact the access to your lake. But and also the use of your yard, like, hey, let's go play football in the yard. Oh, I can't, it's too steep. Now you could probably put a really cool slip and slide back there. That would be fun. Um, but also, if you are thinking about building a home or you're thinking about adding onto your home where you would need to have septic lines, it's really important to make sure you're evaluating whether the lot's slope or even rockiness of the soil and things like that may impact you where you can put that septic line, where you can put the septic. And then if you have, a lot that's a lot easier or more level, and again, the level could be like, okay, my driveway is not too steep going into my house, or maybe it is kind of steeper getting there, but once you're at the house, you're more at lake level. And so it's easier to get to the lake. These are just things to consider, like how easy is it to get to your house? How easy is it to get to the lake? And then the
Ashley,
same,
did you know that slip and slides are not really even a thing that much anymore? Too many injuries, and I know the world we live in. Slip and slides were a really big deal growing up when I was a kid, and I'm sure they were for you too. So,
yeah,
RIP slip and slides. That'll be our
RIP.
Well, actually June will be all about dock permitting, and then July's webinar will be all about slip and slides. So make sure you tune in.
Slip and slide lawsuits. We can always build your own, Parker. Just get a big sheet of plastic and put some water down there.
Oh,
It could be really fun.
oh, we used to do that, like the blue tarp, and then we would put like mineral oil all over the tarp. Oh yeah, we knew how to have a good time back in the early '90s.
Yeah, back when people didn't really monitor what we were doing too much. So, also, utilities in a very similar way is really important to just consider and see how it might impact you. Most of the houses around Lake Lanier already have county water available to them, natural gas and cable, but not all do. And so then you just need to make sure that a lot of them actually have well water instead of county water. And that's really fine water. It's just another thing you need to consider and how you're going to monitor that or make sure people are checking the well water and making sure the well is working. Also, you may need to heat with electricity or with propane if you don't have access to natural gas. And then also here on the lake, the Wi-Fi sometimes or the cellular is not always the best, depending on how your lays, how your house lays on the land. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you can have access to Wi-Fi to be able to have a strong signal at all times. We kind of already talked about the noise. I think people come to the lake a lot of times just to relax and be rested, or they want to hear the wind blowing through the trees or the lake lapping up on the shore or the loons in the late spring here calling to each other. Those are the kinds of things they want to be hearing outside while they're sitting on their porch having coffee or taking a nap, not boats going by or maybe cars from Georgia 400 that's close by. So those are things to consider. And then also, some people have docks, even though you might have a dock permit, it might not be super close to your house. So I'll again compare and contrast my house with my parents' house. You guys already know it's hard to see the lake from my house in the summertime. But also, my dock there's like two other docks in my view before I can see mine. And I can still see it, but you can't, it's not just like there, like, oh, there's my dock, there's my boat. I actually have to keep an eye on it a little bit more regularly. Whereas at my parents' house, you look out at that wide open view and then there's their dock right there too. So you see, there's the dock. Oh, there's the boat. There's people hanging out on the dock. Let me go down and hang out with them. So that's really nice. There's also, I don't remember if we have this in here, but sometimes neighborhoods have a community dock instead of you being able to have your own dock in your backyard. So like if you can't get a dock permit, the next best thing, if you want to have a boat in your neighborhood, is to look for a neighborhood with the community dock, and then you can purchase a slip in that community dock and then be able to just walk over there, take your golf cart over there to have access to your boat.
Hey, Ashley, so how
So
much
Parker,
value does the lakefront add though? That's an
well,
essential question.
I was actually just about to ask you that since I already know the answer. Based on what we just talked about, what would you say based on all of these different items? How much value does the lakefront add?
Goodness, I'm gonna answer that in a technical sense. So if I were to take the exact same size lot and the exact same house, and the only thing that I'm going to make different is that we're not on the lakefront, I would think that, like, in terms of a purchase price, 30-40% less valuable, maybe, but that's just a shot in the dark.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm sorry, I just threw that at you to see what you would say. I was curious. It's really interesting, actually. We have a house under contract right now that we do consider lakefront, but there's actually technically the property itself does not have access to the lake. You have to cross
Okay.
a road to get to the lake. But the reason we consider it lakefront is because of the view.
Right, right.
And that's why I had that conversation with that appraiser actually about that. And this house is a beautiful home. It's like one you would find in a country club somewhere. There's just details and everything, the trim, hand painted ceilings. It's an amazing home.
Right.
And really, we're selling it for the price that maybe that same home would be in your country club somewhere else. Let's say you wanted to play golf or you wanted to be in
Okay.
part of like that. So, in that sense, I'm not sure that the lakefront really added too much value. Now, but what did add value in this case was the location of where it was, because it's so easy to get to some
Okay.
really fun things on the lake. So, I think maybe a better way to ask this question is not how much value does the lakefront add, but if you have a house, if you are looking for a house on a lake, then, or you're trying to sell a house on a lake, then what aspects of my house are adding value
Hmm.
to this purchase? Or, okay, I'm a buyer,
Right.
and a buyer calls me and they say, Ashley, I want a lake house. I don't want to spend more than $1 million. And all right, okay, let me do like our normal people like us. Ashley, I'm a buyer. I don't want to spend more than $600,000 on a
Right.
house. And the most important thing to me is that I have a dock because my friends come over all the time and I want to be able to take them out on a boat.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care about the view. I don't care about anything else. Well, as we talked about, dock permits on Lake Lanier are kind of valuable because there aren't really anymore unless you get
Right.
on a
Right.
waiting. So it is actually really hard to find a $600,000 house with a dock that has water that would allow a boat to be used most of the year.
Yeah.
Um, so in a way, it adds a lot of value. But what I can tell that buyer is, okay, this is something that's really valuable, and this is why. And so when something pops up on the market, we need to just jump on it if that's
Right.
what you really want, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of really the question we need to ask when we're going through that, and what's most important to you as a buyer, and then we can get a good better ballpark range of how much that's going to cost. Or as a seller, here's the things that we can really call out and justify our pricing. So the same like my house that I'm sitting in right now, I could probably sell in a week for $900,000. Now
Wow.
that's for other reasons. Somebody would probably tear it down and build a $1.5 million home on
Right.
it that
Right.
they could
Right.
then turn around and sell for $3.5 million. Um, but my house right now could sell for $900,000. But you put this house, exact same house on the same size lot with a big
Uh-huh.
view, and it would sell for easily 1.5, 1.47.
Wow.
So it really does make a big difference.
So where you're so in that situation, I mean, we're talking like a 50% increase.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's see. All right. Now let's talk about marketing a Lake Lanier home to sell though.
All right. So you're a seller. You're looking to sell your house. You want to make sure that you find some good buyers and get the best price possible. So the main thing is you really need to know your audience. And we kind of, as we talked about things that are important to people when they're buying lake homes, maybe that suggested some things, Parker, and not to put you on the spot again, but of the type of audience that we would be looking for someone to buy on the lake. Are we looking for people who love like car racing?
Gosh, that's a really good. I mean, so I think about that question on like larger demographic sub pops, right? So
Sure.
for example, um, oftentimes you will have folks who are in their late 50s, early 60s retirement age, and they're liquidating some assets, and it might be like a downsize in terms of square footage, but it's like this is where we're going to go play with our grandkids. This is where we're going to be, forever, right? Um,
Yes.
so that would definitely be that's the first having grown up around Lake Lanier, like that's what I would think of is you do what you need to do. Maybe you own a house off of Green Street in Gainesville, and then you pay it off, lit equity build, and then when you retire and all your empty nesters, you go buy or build that dream house on like the lake. But
Yes.
other than that, I would imagine that if you've got folks who are looking at Lake Lanier as a destination, I would imagine you probably have some folks who are higher net worth, but also you probably have some folks who might even be high enough, have a high enough net worth to where they're trying to get a second or a vacation home that maybe they can Airbnb on the side. But I don't know. You're the expert. I'm kind of rambling here.
Yeah, sorry, I had to put you on mute. My neighbor next door actually does love car racing, so he's got a really loud one that he just started up.
Oh, that's funny.
Hopefully it's not impacting this too much. Yeah, Parker, those were some great thoughts, and I think it will depend a lot of on what the house is that you're selling. Are you selling a home that has like two master bedroom suites in it? That might be something where we're going for people who are maybe families who might share a home or best friends who want to go in and share a home together. Um, or it could be the same house, could be someone who wants to live there full time too, and it's a great neighborhood to live in. So in at that price point, who it's going to maybe be at that price point, and based on the way the house is laid out, maybe it's going to be like what you're talking about, someone who's about to retire or just retiring. So that is important. But I guess what we need to know is like this isn't yes, we're gonna put your house on the MLS, which means it's gonna be on Zillow and Realtor.com and all of those things. But we we're not this isn't like selling a traditional home in a neighborhood and you're not looking for like the best schools. Although where I live on Lake Lanier has excellent schools. Um, but you're not necessarily looking for that, or if you're not necessarily looking for like a community where there's kids running around, you can play with your kids, right? You're looking for the lake life. And so it's important that you make sure as you're going to be marketing your home that you're marketing it to people who will actually be looking for a lake home and not just looking for some other type of home in that same price point.
That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then really it makes a lot of sense also to choose a realtor who's experienced selling waterfront homes. As we just talked about, we just barely touched the surface of this, but there are a lot of intricacies that come along with waterfront homes that other agents are not going to know about. And I promise you, if you have an agent that you love and you're like, I just want them to help me find this house on the lake, um, there's a really good chance you're gonna end up with a house that you think you love, and sometime in the next 1 to 2 years, you're gonna be really upset you didn't choose someone who knew that particular waterfront. I'll give an example of a home that sold last year for $850,000. So, doesn't not too out of reach for a lot of people, right? It was super cute. It's still a super cute home. It has a nice front porch. It's in a nice neighborhood. But at the time, the water levels were really high here, and the dock, which you cannot see from the house, but the dock was in the water. But that home almost always does not have its dock in the water. And the agent who helped their buyer buy the home didn't know the lake. So they were like, look at this awesome house and look at the dock. And oh my gosh. So maybe that same house would have sold for a lot less money. Even if you loved the house and knew that you might not use the dock all the time and you were okay with that, you could have gotten a better price on the home. And same thing for selling, just to know like what can we really get? And then, okay, your agent says, hey, let's sell this house for 700,000. It's because it doesn't have great water all the time, right? And then the agent might say, I might even say, you know what? There might be a couple buyers out there who'd be willing to pay 850 for this home based on these other factors. And if you're willing to wait, and if we're willing to like do some target marketing for those types of people, then we might be able to sell your house for 850. But here's our range of like realistic. If people are literally looking for a home that they can use the dock all the time, it might be 700. If they're looking for a home that's super cute and that they're going to love this neighborhood and they're okay sometimes having a dock, then 850. And then that helps us determine.
Interesting. It sounds like you know a lot about this stuff, Ashley. You should be a realtor who specializes in lake properties on Lake Lanier.
Well, it definitely helps also to have a realtor who lives on the lake. Um, just so there is a whole the great thing about being on a lake is you really get this lake life and it's a real thing. It's a casual lifestyle. People generally many people are retired or pretend like they're retired all the time. So they're not hurried or frustrated or worried about things as much as the rest of the world. And it's really nice to get away. So like learning that like lake life experience, learning about driving on your boat to a restaurant for dinner instead of driving somewhere out to go out to eat. Um, but then also someone who has lived here and specifically for Lake Lanier, and I would say for any other lake that has rules like ours are with the Army Corps of Engineers. As a homeowner, you haven't just heard of these rules, but you actually know them, live them, and have probably had a fine or two or a warning from the Corps. So there are ways that realtor who's a lakefront homeowner is going to be able to help you a lot more again in making sure that you're having your home ready to sell where the Corps, for example, isn't going to get you in trouble on the back end too.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. Ashley, I'm telling you, you need to go ahead and just send out the recording of this webinar to anyone who's thinking about listing and or buying on the lake. Um,
Thanks.
and so that was, now let's talk about buying a property on Lake Lanier. I know that we already covered a lot of this stuff when it comes to, the different advantages and disadvantages, but I feel like these are some good summary slides.
Yeah, and these are really similar actually to selling. And for the same, I kind of actually just touched on both for most of those last three slides that we went through. But if you're buying on the lake and somebody, your agent doesn't know the lake very well, or maybe they like Parker, you grew up coming to Lake Lanier all the time, which is great. So you got the experience down,
Right.
right? But you still don't know like what the water levels are like in these different coves, or
Exactly.
what the rules are in certain areas. And so it's really does help a lot to have someone who lives on the lake
Oh, absolutely.
or has experience selling them and who lives on the lake. Yes, that's both of those. So yeah.
And then we'll also, oh my goodness, I think it's my turn. I was so transfixed about like, I need to go buy a lake house, which I
Well,
cannot afford right now.
before you get started, Parker, and if you don't mind, I'll transition us into this section
Yeah.
a little bit. So, guys, I have a lot of buyers who are looking to be on Lake Lanier, and houses here range in style, condition, age, everything. So after a while, I would say about 30 to 40% of my lake buyer clients we end up finding a lot for them to build on, because they're like, you know what? If I can pay maybe a little bit more in the long run to have a lot and then build my house from scratch exactly how I want it, then it's really much more valuable to me. And so Parker and I talk about this all the time. Like, what are the best ways that my clients can fund this? Because they can't like buy a lot and then go build a home. Like, they just can't, most people can't do that. And so with Parker's new company, AFN, he has some ways that people can. And this is really exciting. So I'm really excited, Parker, for you to share how people can do this now and what kind of products you provide.
No, I'm really, really excited. This is probably Ashley. It wasn't the only reason why I made the switch to AFN, but it was one of the big selling points. Before I even kind of talk about what this one-time closed construction product is, I think it's good to paint a picture about what it typically looks like when you're trying to buy land and build. Okay. So, whenever you're trying to buy land and build, oftentimes what you're having to do is either A, have the cash to buy the land outright. That's hard for a lot of folks. And so, what do you have to do? We have to go get financing. Sometimes you can buy that land with like a hard money or bridge loan. It's a super high interest loan that you have to pay off after 12 months. Or maybe you just get a straight up land loan where you're going to have to do 20, sometimes 30% down. All right, so now we've got the land. So, how do we actually finance the construction? We're building the land and we now bought. Well, same type deal, either paying with cash or maybe you're getting a line of credit on a pre existing property. Or, and I could go on and on. The point being is that unless you just have a stupid amount of money to throw around, buying a lake lot and then building on that lake lot and then trying to figure out the financing for that is incredibly expensive and incredibly time intensive. But what's really cool is if you have ever bought a home in, let's say, a DR Horton neighborhood or a David Weekley neighborhood, think of it's like I'm going under contract. My house has not been built yet. And yet I get my earnest money. I wait around 8 months and oh my gosh, my house is built and now I get to close. The reason being is because you have a big enough company that's fronting the funds to get that construction done. So that's essentially what my company is doing. And what you're going to be able to do is buy land and build your home, and you only have to close one time and get ready for it. It's just a normal. And by the way, Ashley, we do this for FHA, VA, USDA. I'm not going to talk about those because oftentimes VA, FHA, and USDA, they're going to have price restrictions. And so if you're going to build in Lanier, it's probably going to be a conventional loan, if not a jumbo loan. So that's the reason we're sticking with this. But here's what you need to be able to do in order to buy land and build on it with this one-time closed loan. One, it's got to be owner occupied or a second home. So you can use this for a vacation home. Next, you have to have at least a 680 credit score. And then it's got to be a 30-year fixed or a 15-year fixed. Now, whether
Parker,
you're, go ahead.
what's the difference between a second home and a vacation home?
It's the exact same thing. They're just used interchangeably. Usually a second home is used as a vacation home, but sometimes someone might, work. They might have work responsibilities in LA, and then they also have an office in New York, and so they have to split time.
Sure.
So, but
Okay.
no, usually you use them interchangeably.
Okay.
So here's what this means, though. You're just like, wait, purchase refi, what does that mean? Well, sometimes you'll have folks who already own the lot. Let's say, for example, Ashley, that you've got somebody who inherits a lake lot from a parent who's passed away, right? Well, if that's the case, then what we're doing is we're still building on that lot. It's still going to feel like a normal purchase transaction, but it'll just be coded as a refinance. Bottom line is whether you own the lot or you don't own the lot, it's still going to be this. You can put as little as 5% down. I'm going to say that one more time. We're buying the lot, building the house. The total price, you could put as little as 5% down. Now, if you're trying to build that vacation home, you got to put at least 10% down. Okay.
Okay.
So this is huge. Not only that, but loan limits, conventional loans, they have loan limits. We're not going to talk about that in this webinar. Just know there are limits. But there are something called high balance conventional loan where you can go over that conforming loan limit. And so this is an amazing option. Moving on down, let's talk about how that works. So first is you have to use only one builder. Okay, so you can't piecemeal it together. That is a restriction. The second thing too is when we're talking about reserve requirements, you got to make sure you've got at least whatever your monthly mortgage payment is going to be. You got to make sure that you've got at least 6 months of reserves if you're only doing a 5 to 10% down payment, 3 months of reserves if you're doing a 10 to 15% down payment. And then this is the coolest part, Ashley, is let's talk about how the actual building works. All right, so I found a lake, I found a lot, cool. I found my builder, great, we're closing. And by the way, we are closing and everybody's getting paid before you've even started to build the lake house. All right. But what happens? Well, what happens is at closing, 10% of the entire construction budget is released to the builder. All right. And then what's happening is draws are paid based on the cost breakdown of completed work. So let's say, for example, we're quoted the foundation is going to cost $20,000. Where if the builder is 100% done with the foundation, they can request $20,000. But let's say that they're running short on funds, the builder, because building a house is expensive. Well, if the foundation is at least half done, they can still draw out half of that construction cost. Now, in terms of what you're going to be paying, you're going to be doing interest only payments based on the draws every single month on the 10th until we have the occupancy certificate and we're good to go. So you do have to make those interest only payments, but I will say those interest only payments are not going to be crazy expensive. And it'll certainly be a lot cheaper than you trying to come up with 20 to 30% down to do some type of land loan and or bridge loan. Now,
Parker,
Ashley, go ahead.
just curious, like if you had do you have any idea of what that interest only percent might look like
Well,
in
yeah, so
construction?
it's based on the note rate, right? So let's say, for example, okay, so let's say, for example, that we have a 30-year fixed mortgage. It's going to be at a 6%. Okay, then whenever we are, and let's pretend like it's a normal loan. So if I'm saying, Ashley, you got a 30-year fixed mortgage is at a 6%, your monthly mortgage payment is going to be, $1,800, right?
Okay.
Well, if you look at the amortization chart, you can see how much of that $1,800 is interest versus how much of it is going to be principal, especially for that first year. Okay. So you're using the same terms of the loan. Now, the one big difference is those interest only payments are based on the draw balance. So let's just say that your builder, let's say we have a construction budget of 400,000, right? And your builder takes out $100,000 and uses that, you might make interest only payments just on $100,000 for 4, 5, 6 months. And then the rest of the project might happen super quickly to where you're doing interest only payments on that higher balance only once or twice before you're actually done and then you're just rolling into your normal mortgage. So it really
Got
kind of depends on the project, but it's pretty negligible. Um, Now, in terms of what you need to kind of be thinking about, are these six things. One, land details. Is the land being purchased or is it already owned? Construction details. What's the lot size, dwelling square footage, number of bedrooms? Construction costs. We're going to talk about this in just a second. Any deposits made to date, estimated as completed value, and then months to build. For my company, from the time we close to the time we get the occupancy certificate, it has to be in 12 months or less. So that's something else to really consider too, is you can't do this and then try to build the Taj Mahal and then be indecisive about, what color you want to hand paint your ceiling. Like you do have to get it done in 12 months. And then in terms of what do we need in order to close, you're going to need these six elements. A 1003 is a loan application. It's just a normal loan app that you would fill out for anything. We then would need a signed budget with a line items and draw schedule. That's something that the builder provides or the builder fills out. I give the template, the builder just needs to fill it out. We then need the construction contract from the builder. We then need the land or lot contract. So that would come from you, Ashley. Well, both would come for you, but you would obviously take point on the land contract. And then we would need complete plans and specs, as well as the deed showing ownership of the lot, if applicable. Remember, that's if you actually already own the land before you're building. And this is a snapshot of kind of what the meat of this packet looks like is, and it goes on for like 7 pages, but this is what the builder needs to fill out, right? How much are the plans and prints? Soil test engineering, survey, building permits, impact fee, demolition, clearing the lot and grading it, excavation and backfill, site work. And so I will say the thing about this program and product, Ashley, is it's super intensive on the front end. I actually have one that's under contract in Texas right now, and I keep getting pressure to order the appraisal. And I keep saying, where's my packet? They're like, well, the builder is dragging his feet. I go, I cannot order the appraisal until this packet is done. So it's pretty intensive on the front end. But here's the good news. Once you've got all this figured out on the front end in this packet, you close in 30 days, you own the land, you've got your construction budget. Not only that, this is my favorite part, Ashley. There is no, like, the builder can't come back to you and say, oh, sorry, like it's actually like, materials have gone up in price. Like it is what it is. No, no, no. The builder cannot get paid unless they stay within the budget that they have outlined ahead of time. And so the builder is also, so the builder is agreeing to this, and they're not going to get paid out if they try to, say, oh, it's going to cost more. It's like, sorry, it is what it is. So that's also really great incentive, Ashley, for the builder to hurry up and get this done, because the faster they get this done, the less likely they are in having, costs overrun and all that fun COVID stuff that we used to have to worry about. So if you're interested in this and you want Ashley to help find you an amazing lake lot so that you can build, or Ashley, this entire thing that we just talked about, I've got a packet that is just for renovations. That's the other thing to think about too. It's not just about construction. You might find the perfect lake lot with the perfect dock, with the perfect view in a house that you just hate. That's fine too. You can also use this product to essentially do a complete reno overhaul of a house. So really, really cool product. And I think we're running way over, Ashley, but we don't have any questions from the audience, except for that one that we talked about earlier on. But do you have any questions about what I just said, or do you have anything that you want to clarify about your portion?
I think I'm really excited about what you just shared, Parker. I actually am like, okay, what lot can I go buy so I can build myself a house and
That's
sell
right.
this one for 950,000, you know? Um, so this is great, exciting news. I'm sure I and other people, as we think about this a little bit more, will have some questions after we've taken some time to process it. But I'll be reaching out to you for sure to understand that even better.
Awesome.
Hopefully I've got a client or two or me who can use this in the near
Yeah.
future. So we'll become more expert on what you've got to offer. I do have one question,
Sure.
actually. This one just came in from a person who's watching who is a builder.
Oh,
And
nice.
he wants to know if he, as a builder, could be eligible for this himself. Like if he found the lot and then wanted to like construct a home that was not sold to anybody yet, but he wanted to go ahead
Yeah.
and construct the home. How does that, is it any different than a regular person? That's what he put.
That's a great question. So part of the big packet, and this is something that we may need to do a whole other session on, is if you are a licensed and bonded builder, you're going to have workers' comp insurance. You're going to have what you need to have to actually have a company. So what the builder that is like what he could not do is just like, I know how to build things, so I'm just going to do it myself. He can't do that. But if he wants to use his company that's bonded and insured, oh, absolutely. That is not a conflict of interest at all. That's a great question.
Cool. Well, that's very exciting. I hope you can use that.
And also,
Um,
too, actually, this is something that I would love to team up with our custom builders as well, because honestly, this is a way for builders to kind of obtain financing for their projects. And so, if you're a builder and you're working with clients that are having a hard time getting financing in place so that you can get the funds to build their house, this is also an amazing opportunity for us to partner to.
well, that's really funny because while you were saying that, that builder said, wrote in here, don't tell other builders about this. I want to be able to get as many of these lots as I can to do it for
There you
myself.
go.
But yes, I think this is great. And actually, I work with several builders that I really like a lot that build here on the lake and elsewhere in Atlanta. And I'm excited to share this with
Yeah,
you.
and I'll make sure to give you the packet. It's about, I think, 16, 17 pages, and it's I'll sound like a broken record like I am with this one deal in tech. Is like, is my packet done yet? I'm like, I can't do anything until this packet is filled out. But once it's filled out, we're ready to grip it and rip it and go.
Cool. Very exciting. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much. I'm so excited for you with your new role with AFN. And I see already a lot of differences and ways that you can really serve our clients even further. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Congratulations. And thanks for
Thanks so
being on.
much, Ashley. And hey, I'll see you soon, but I'll definitely see you the first Friday in June. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.